All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for being here. Hello to everyone online. I think that I hope you enjoy today. We are having a new format where we're going to be broadening the topics up to other things that I hope will be of interest to you. We'll see a little bit today, for instance, about together, things around the budget, things from the Controller's Office, procurement, and the Project Management Office. So we're not just going to talk about the financial system or anything like that, give you a break from that. We're still available for any and all questions along the way. Just if you have a question, either use one of the mics that's here, or let us get a mic to you to answer. But we would like any and all of that. We're looking for feedback on the format and the changes and such to the town hall. We have a sign-up sheet we're going to send around to the folks in the room. We just would like your email address. We won't send you any spam or advertisings or anything like that. What we will do is send you to a link to a survey, and simply wanting to get your feedback in terms of the format and some other things around the town hall. Those of you who are joining live lead you also to the survey, and if not, there's also, you can comment via the chat box that's on there, or send it email to the cornerstone@rutgers.edu mailbox. So we really would like the feedback on that, and we continue to make these better and more valuable to you. So first of all, I want to introduce a couple of new folks in the University Finance Administration. Chris, where are you? Chris Bailey? Yes. Chris is our new Assistant Vice President for Financial Planning and Budgeting. He is going to be providing leadership in the budget office and be a key player as we're looking towards improving every year the whole budget and financial planning and reporting processes. He comes to us from the state of New Jersey, where he was CFO of the Human Services Department for many years, and we're thrilled to have him here, and he'll be a good resource to any of you who are working in the budget realm. So the other individual, Brady Speller, who is the director of our Change Management Office. He comes to us from decades of change management experience, for which we were looking for Brady to bring to us, and I'm just thrilled that both of these gentlemen are here and our key team, and that we've got a lot of good things ahead as a result of their leadership coming into here. Archie, around the time, it would have been in towards the end of March, around the Middle States Accreditation Review. So the Middle States Commission on Higher Education is the body that reviews universities and colleges in the Mid-Atlantic region, if you will. And they assess the institutions around a set of standards. And those standards have everything to do from governance to financial management to student programs, assessment, student support, all those kinds of things. Now, this is a very important thing for any college or university, financial aid from the Department of Education, and consequently also from the state of New Jersey. But it's also an opportunity to be reviewed by our peers and to get good suggestions about how have we progressed. How can we progress even better? And it's done it was done on an every 10 years basis. Now it's going to every 8 years. And it's a big deal. The process building up to the site visit, which lasted 3 days, took a year and a half. And it took a lot of individuals, including maybe some in this room, who were involved in various pieces of it, whether it be a team that put together things that came from the team or whatnot. We had the site visit during I think the one day that the university closed for snow this year. And let me tell you that it was a quiet place. But we were still able to use video conferencing facilities to connect the team, the site team, site visit team to individuals that they needed to talk to. We were able to provide for the information that they needed and have a good visit. So these are the things that a site visit or a team does. Ensure that standards of quality are met. Is there continuous improvement going on? Making sure that faculty, students, and staff are all involved. And then, as I noted, the accountability to federal and state educational agencies. We actually get graded on this in June when the Middle States Commission meets. There we go. These are the standards, as noted, mission, goals, ethics, et cetera, et cetera. And all this information of the self-study and such, by the way, is available on the record submitted. And ultimately, the report will be as well. But this was the feedback from the team and a combination of commendations and suggestions. And the one thing that is missing, which is a good thing, is required changes or responses. Something that would be identified as a problem area for which the university would have to provide a plan or more information or corrective action. And in our case, we were very pleased to not have one of those. So accommodations that came along, affordability and accessibility, a focus on that. That has been something that President Barchi has pushed in terms of limiting tuition increases, promoting programs such as Run to the Top in Newark and Bridging the Gap in Camden, ways to get Rutgers more accessible to more students. In fact, the team suggested that we have such a focus on that we ought to incorporate it into our actual mission statement. Leadership in the shared governance, transparency, the transformational changes that have come as a result of the merger with the units from UMD and J, which, as I continue to remind people outside of Rutgers as well as inside, no one's ever done a merger of that size before in higher education. And not that we're done with it yet. And then finally, the sustained commitment. Provide suggestions, examining, clarifying commitment to online courses. What is our strategy around online? We have a lot of online, but yeah, there's not a strategy that's woven between all those programs. There's also a difference in how we deliver them. We should be thinking about that, and I think that's important. Continued efforts to close the achievement gaps, better coordination of student fairs, collaboration, and programs. Are there more ways that we can do financial aid gap filling in New Brunswick the way we're doing it in Newark and Camden? And that's a tough one because the way we're doing it in Newark and Camden is building into a growing student body. More students filling capacity, if you will, which on the campus here is we're kind of full. So that's one that's a question. And then one that is been an issue, and we identified, but an issue for students either coming from other institutions or coming from one Rutgers campus to another, and that is transfer policies and such. So those suggestions are well taken, will likely come out in the Middle States report in some way, fashion, but also lead to some really good conversations here, given that our peers from other institutions raise these with us. Any questions about the Middle States? It's something that's only happens once in a while, so it's a big rush of work. Okay. If anybody does have any questions, you can keep them, or anybody online can enter a question on that. I'd like to turn it over to Richard Axe to talk about an overview of the university finances.
Good afternoon. I feel like I should start off with saying who heard Laurel and who heard Yanni. So we're going to have some occasional discussions at the Treasurer's Town Hall about various finance topics that the university has to address. Today I want to talk a little bit about financing capital projects. So just to give some background on this, we have several sources of funding for capital projects, including university bonds, gifts, plant funds, state funding, including the Building Our Future bonds, which I'm sure people who lived in the state recall voting for in 2012. So bonds enable the university to borrow money today in the bond market and pay it back over 30 years. And we have about $2 billion of bonds outstanding, and our annual debt service right now is about $150 million. So a very large piece of our finances are tied up in bonds. As a matter of fact, this building was financed by bonds issued in 2010 under a special program that the federal government authorized after the financial crisis, which in addition to having a low borrowing cost based on the university's credit, the federal government further subsidized the rate. So the rate for bonds that financed this building and others on the campus was about 3%. So very attractive cost of financing. And in March of this year, we sold $144 million in bonds to fund projects that have been approved by the Board of Governors. So what I want to touch on today are 4 topics: the capital planning process, our debt management policy, which provides a framework under which we issue debt, our rating agency evaluation, which we get for every bond issue, and sometimes if we're not doing a bond issue in between, and then a brief overview of capital spending and future capital projects. So I'm sure many of this is familiar to you. Maybe it's been a frustration to you at times, but the capital planning process is designed to align our strategic plans and master plans with capital priorities and the university's ability to finance new projects. And the key elements of the process are, first of all, your priorities in the departments, the university's priorities, unit priorities. Second is project development with institutional planning and operations, and that ends up being the biggest piece, working with IPO to develop costs, O&M projections, timing, fundraising requirements. So that really is important throughout the entire process here. Then we have a financial review, which is done with the Debt Management and Capital Finance Office, run by Jeff Manalo, who's here today. And then many of you are aware that projects that are over $5 million go to the Capital Planning Advisory Committee for review. And that review involves both a financial review and a project prioritization review and alignment with the strategic plan. And then finally, all projects over $5 million are required to have Board of Governors review and approval. There are many projects that are done that are below $5 million. And we work closely in financing those with IPO. But this is a new amount, a new threshold for the board. It previously was $2 million. So just be thinking about that as you're thinking about capital projects you might have. So we have a debt management policy that is in the policy library. It's really designed to provide a framework for issuing bonds and to provide metrics for the Board of Governors to evaluate whether a bond issue makes sense and its impact on our finances. So just to give you a sense, here in the graphic is a picture of our debt service schedule over the next 30 years. So as I mentioned, we're paying $150 million in principal and interest. And over time, we pay off the principal and we pay interest as that pays down. And you can see that right now our principal payments are going out to 2048. So we have to keep in mind as we're going along that 150 million represents a important, not huge, but important portion of our annual budget, maybe 3.5% to 4%, and we try to keep it in that range. That's something that outside parties would look at us and say, you know, your debt service shouldn't start to impact your operations to such an extent that it becomes an unreasonable burden. Many of you may also be aware that we get a rating from the bond rating agencies. You might have heard of Standard & Poor's, you know, the S&P 500. Well, they also have a rating service where they assign ratings. And Mike and I have presented this a few times to some PhD candidates that he teaches. And sometimes they have actually helped me find a way to explain this. So think of a credit score. So the way the rating works is if you have a higher rating or higher credit score, you're more likely to be able to get the loan or get the loan at a lower cost of funding. If you have a lower credit rating, lower credit score, you may not be able to get the loan or your credit rating or the cost of the loan may be higher. So that's a good way to understand what the rating agencies do. I would say that our ratings are slightly below the median of large public universities. We have a lot of strengths, but we have some specific challenges which are shown here. So our strengths are that we're the flagship public university of the state. We have over $4 billion in revenue, so we're a very big operation with a lot of revenue potential. We have a growing enrollment. And one of the things that matters to the rating agency is our brand strengthening, which is coming through both the medical enterprise that's being promoted as Rutgers Health, as well as our involvement in athletics and membership in the Big Ten, and other things like the Honors College, which helps strengthen our brand over time. And we have a very diversified revenue base, which is a credit positive. If one is down, maybe the other is up. We can spread our revenue vulnerability over a lot of areas. So what are some of our challenges? First of all, we have thin operating reserves relative to the size of operations, and this is something that's been coming up quite a bit in discussions about tuition going forward. So that's something that we get evaluated on each time. Another thing, and something that's a little bit unusual to us, is the poor funding of the state-sponsored pension plan, which has an impact on our fringe benefit rates. And that's a vulnerability that not every state has, and something that the rating agencies don't quite know exactly how it's going to play out. And then we do have a very aspirational capital plan to do a lot of things. We have 5 campuses to develop, in addition to Newark and Camden. So to the extent that we move forward with the master plans, that can be costly. So let me just talk a little bit about what's been going on. Maybe you know this, but since the merger, let's say, over the last 4 fiscal years, we've actually spent $950 million on capital projects, a huge amount. You can see the majority of that has come from university bonds, 25% from state funds, and the rest from plant funds and gifts. And then just in closing, here's a list of the capital projects that are slated to be financed with the proceeds of the bond issue we just did. And I'm sure many of them are familiar to you here in New Brunswick with the Weeks Hall of Engineering, the Waxman Institute, and eventually the repurposing of ASB 3. So those are other projects around the university, but I'm happy to take any questions on this. Okay, thank you very much. Now I'm going to turn it over to Kathy Detloff, who's going to talk on some budget issues.
Good afternoon, everyone. I just want to give you a brief overview of some of the work that the Budget Office is doing. Hopefully many of you in the audience are participating. First off, this was the first year in fiscal year 18 that we attempted to do what I'll call a bottoms-up mid-year forecast. So we were able to show senior leadership across the university. Here is where we thought the year started with our budget. Here is where we actually are as of January, is when we did the forecast. And based on what we know in January that we didn't know when we created the budget, here is where we think we'll be at year end. This was a huge learning process for us as a university. This is not something that was ever done before. We are beginning to look at the budgets and the activity in the university differently than we did before, right? I know I came after we transferred into the new system, but I heard a lot about state funds. And before I got here and before we were in the new system, that's pretty much what people focused on. So now when the budget office is asking about your salaries that are funded by sponsored grants, people are like, what? That's not what we did before. So as we went through this process, one of the things that we need to work on is determining at what level of detail does it make sense to do a year-end forecast. What is going to work for you as a unit and help your unit leader determine where you are at year-end, what's good for senior leadership here, and then furthermore, what is necessary to tell the board. And I think that was our biggest struggle. We had people attempting to do the forecast at the most detailed level. So the question is, at what level of detail does it really provide the most value? So we're going to continue this process beginning in fiscal year 19. It's going to be part of our cyclical process where we report to senior leadership and the Finance Committee of the Board of Governors our year-to-date actuals against, do a variance analysis against budget, and then where do we think we'll be at year-end. So we'll continue to work to make this a better process. Currently, we're actually in the process of reviewing the fiscal year 19 budgets. So you've all submitted them through Hyperion if you're involved in part of that process. We are now analyzing those submissions. Some of the things that we look at is we look at your budget for next year compared to your prior year actuals, your 18 budget, as well as what you're spending and what your revenue sources are as of today. So we will filter questions back to the units. If you're part of a chancellor's unit, we do filter them through the chancellor's office, so that way they can see the types of questions we're asking. They may have some of the answers already. And if you're a central unit, we'll do that through your central unit rep. We need to get variance explanations because when senior leadership here, or even the board, sees big changes, we need to be able to tell them why. So whether it might be a growth in a program or additional enrollment, we need to be able to pinpoint that. So this is a little different than before. It's a much more analytical process than we've done in the past. Also, both the Controller's Office and the Budget Office is involved in the Chart of Accounts initiative. I truly hope everybody in the room knows what I'm talking about already, because I feel like I've been all over this university talking about it. So some of the things that we're doing, as mentioned in the open forum, is we are trying to make a lot of progress between now and July 1st so that we use the Chart of Accounts in a much more effective way beginning in 19. So some of the things that you've been asked to do and that we're now working on implementing the changes, so you were asked to update your project master data. And that's in an attempt to, what we're going to do is we're going to put subledger accounting rules in place that needs that data. So I actually think today and yesterday we were uploading that master data. We're also developing cross-validation rules. So what this does is not allow you to use chart combinations that don't make sense. And we're correcting data. So we have this monitoring report, or I've called it exception reporting. And that says, based on what we're seeing in transactions today, and based on these rules that we're developing, here are the things that are not going to work July 1. And we're working with all the units to get those changed. The good news is that as of May 7th, we put rules in place that in Marketplace, RU Marketplace, and PeopleSoft that says if the UDO combination does not exist today, we're not going to let you use it. And we were all geared up. We were ready for this to be a problem. People trying to transact and not allowing, we were ready. It was quiet, so it was a good thing. So I think we're getting a lot of engagement from people through the open forums and the webinars, so that was great. So we are continuing to test the rules, and what we're finding through the exception reporting is sometimes we need to tweak the rule. Maybe the rule was too stringent, and then sometimes we realize that people are still misusing the chart and we have to go out. And another thing we found is some of our interfaces, some of our automatic feeds, were still using information that needed to be updated. So we're learning a lot through this process, as I hope you are, as you're looking at the exception reporting. So we are getting all ready to implement and put those CVRs into place for July 1, because my goal is to be clean in fiscal year 19. If you are really confused about what I'm talking about, we spent probably, as our team went out and about, probably over the last 5 or 6 weeks, we did 8 open forums on each of the campuses, where we kind of engaged people and said, hey, here's what we're doing. This is what we have to do to get ready for fiscal year 19. And that was kind of the beginning stages. We had gone to the business officers meetings before that to make people aware that we were going to be doing these open forums and who should be in the room. The Controller's Office has a piece of their website that's dedicated to the Chart of Accounts Initiative, and it shows you up here where you can find it. Those open forums are available. I think we have one that's available for you to listen to. So if you weren't able to make it, you can still go and listen to the open forum, get an understanding of what we're doing and what we're trying to accomplish. As well, we've been holding webinars. So the open forum said, here is what you need to do and here's why. The webinars teach you how to do it. So if we're asking you for an action and you don't know how to do it, the webinars will tell you how to do that. And we've had 3 so far. One focused on valid and invalid UDO combinations and how do you go about figuring out why they're not valid and how do you change them. The other is particularly focused on employee charging instructions, as well as changing your purchase order lines in RU Marketplace. And we just kicked off this week with doing the subledger accounting rules. And we're going to kind of continue to do them. The attendance was really good. We can't really tell how many people are watching them online after, but we had a couple of 100 people actively participating in each webinar. So we're going to continue to do those as we go along. The team did a great job in putting the information out there in a way that was easily understandable to the audience. So that's what we continue to work on. I'm happy to answer any questions. Okay, I'm going to hand it over to Pete Larson, our University Controller.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to talk to you about some of the new systems that we're putting in, again, okay? So these are really a few applications that we're putting in the Controller's Office. They're really going to help us with our financial reporting cycle, as well as improve internal controls. We're seeing actually a lot of good results already. So really we're leveraging now off the Oracle Financial Platform. We've actually put a lot of work into this. As we have started back around the December timeframe, started implementing some of these new systems. There, a couple of them are about to go live. Some are we've already got training already done for, and we're kind of anxious to get them into operation because they're really going to help us with the financial reporting cycle. That said, even while we're preparing to launch these applications, we've been doing a lot of work on data quality through the financial systems. On a weekly basis, going back now for months, the senior management team in finance gets together, including the budget office and treasurer's office, and we review our financial statements, going through our management P&Ls or income statements for revenue expenses for operating income and expenses, as well as taking a look at what would be our published financial statements more currently for our third quarter Q3 and in March. And these systems should help us deliver these and give us a better control environment overall. So let me introduce the few that we have. So off of the Oracle Cloud system, we have Oracle ARCS, which is Account Reconciliation Cloud Service package. And essentially what that does is it extracts the ending balances in our balance sheet for like receivables, cash, and AP liabilities and so forth, and puts this into a module where we can take a look and control those account reconciliations. So at any point in time, we can see how many reconciliations have done, whether we've reconciled everything, we have a good understanding of what's in those accounts. So that's a key vehicle for us overall, and I'll get to a little bit more details on that, but I just wanted to introduce at a higher level these items. Then we have Oracle FCCS. A lot of folks abbreviate it as FCCS because you get 3 C's going and you just keep going, it seems. But it's a financial consolidation and close cloud service. It's really doing 2 things for us. The main thing is it's going to extract data out of the Oracle financial system and then allow us to create our financial statements right out of Oracle, which is really terrific because most universities and a lot of businesses, even public corporations, they do these fancy general ledger systems. It all gets extracted, and guess where they get produced? Do I have any volunteers with where it gets produced out of? Did I hear Excel? You're right. So that's typically where most people are with this, even large corporations. But FCCS will give that to us with a very good controlled environment that our auditors will be very, very happy with. And we can even do things in FCCS like put in our final adjustments working with the auditors at that very high level, and then go back and put them into our detailed financial system. But while we're working with the auditors, we can turn that around pretty quickly and get it into our annual report through that process. Which brings me to the last item, which is the Oracle EPRCS system, which is the Enterprise Performance and Reporting Cloud Service. Essentially what that does for us is it allows us to take the financial statements out of FCCS directly, load them into that module, into a table, and then merge that with text to create our annual report. It's a very slick thing for us to do, and it helps us a lot with our timing with the auditors. It has a lot of other control features in it for us, so as we go through, and any number in that report can probably show up 80 different times in management and checking this, and it's fully integrated. Just graph helps us understand, like we can look at any point in time if we probably have at this point something like 700 balance sheet accounts to reconcile. So you can imagine us trying to reconcile all those and keep track of those. We actually have done a lot of work going through, because of the new chart of accounts and the new going from Banner and RIAS into Oracle. We had a lot of excess accounts that really didn't get used, and in some cases, and in fact many cases, we had people wanted to make sure that they had an account for what their activity was in Banner. They had something for RIAS, and we ended up with 2 accounts. And even within those systems, there could have been some redundancies. So we did a first big pass through this a couple of months ago, and we end dated something like 500 accounts that we don't need to have, so you can't transact on those anymore. And then as we're working on this ARCS implementation, we're identifying specific individuals to pair reconciliations for various accounts. And we're down to about 700 accounts, but I think we can probably squeeze out another 200, 250 accounts that we no longer need. In fact, I was working with HR this morning, and we agreed to eliminate 40 accounts. So there were some that didn't have activities, other that were consolidating, and we're all very happy about that because they don't have to do 40 account reconciliations. There's also some advanced features in ARCS where we can do auto reconciliation. So we don't have to have people constantly reworking account reconciliations, like if there's no change in the account balance, or if the balance is operating within an acceptable range of the normal activity. We still want people to review those activity accounts, but if there's no change, and it's already reconciled, there's certainly no need to do busy work. We all are busy enough, I would think, right? Okay, so the Oracle FCCS we've talked about already too. Really, I just put on here the main financial statements that we have, which is our statement of net position, statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net position, and our statement of cash flows. There'll also be a couple of other items coming out of there. You've probably heard us talk about our allocation of resources and transfers across campus. That report will be built in here, which basically provides revenues and expenses by campus. Now, in the past, we had to compile this together going through multiple systems. Last year, we had a difficult time, of course, with the first year with our financial system, where we actually spent probably 2 to 3 months this year, starting back in January through the March timeframe, just to make sure we had allocated the revenues and expenses to each campus properly. With FCCS and the enhancements that we're doing in the financial system, the way we're recording data throughout the year now, we won't have to go through that. We should be able to produce this report almost immediately after we close our financial system, probably sometime after the audit in early November. So that's a huge improvement for us. That report in particular is a requirement by the state of New Jersey by law that we have to provide. So we're happy to get that in good form and get that to them as timely as possible. Then last is the Oracle EPRCS. It won't produce this nice cover, but everything between the front and back cover it will be able to produce for us, which is really a fantastic place to be for us. So anyway, we're happy to see those systems, happy to have the university's support in helping us get those systems built and fund those processes. Okay, next and probably most important to you, these are some key dates on the for central accounting and the field, everyone else other than central accounting for fiscal year end. Now, earlier this year, we introduced a closed schedule more for interim periods, so July through May, where we close on an 8-day cycle, where we close the AP ledger, project ledger, and the general ledger. And we do payroll accruals even before that. For year end, we always have a more long period to do this. So essentially, everyone's getting the month of July a little bit more to get things in good shape for fiscal year end, June 30, 2018. There's several reasons for that. We do need the time. We have some special initiatives going on that we want to make sure are in good shape. We did have a pretty bumpy ride last year, and we want to make sure we're definitely in better shape this year. I can certainly tell you that, because we're seeing a lot better, much better improvements on everything across the board as far as recording of transactions, timely processing of transactions, less things going into suspense, conversion data being cleaned up. We have a lot of that stuff behind us, some still to do, but we're in a lot better shape for this year. And to use Kathy's slogan, we're going to be clean in 19, right? So we're going to clean up all the UDOs and all the CVR validations going in. Should get us to a much, much better place even in 19. But the key dates really for us here are August 3rd. So we're going to close both the project ledger and the general ledger. I have a slide next talking about procurement that Nimish is going to talk to a little bit, I believe. But these are that's really the key date for you. KPMG will be in here in just a couple of weeks. June 4th, they're going to be taking a look at the results through the quarter ended March. And then they come back in here after we've closed the June ledgers. We will have June adjusted open where we would put our audit entries in, things like our pension adjustments and anything else that we didn't get into the regular June close. So we will have that open during the audit period. They start their audit on the 20th of August. That will go through September and October. Our filing is supposed to be November 1st for the state for our annual financial report. So I guess those are the key dates. Nimish, I want to pull up this next slide if you want to talk to that a little bit. That would be good.
Thanks, Pete. Good afternoon, everyone. The slide you see here is probably similar to what you've seen last year. We're at the year-end close, and there's some key dates that everyone should be cognizant about. The most important ones are beginning of June. We want to get all the large transactions into the system, at least the requisitions in, so we can start processing them. And then around the 15th, we want to make sure the T&E are submitted. All the accounts payable invoices that need to be entered into the system are submitted as well. And make sure all the purchasing maintenance work that needs to be done is teed up. That only gives us a couple of weeks to process all of those. The main concept here is to try and get the large value transactions up sooner than later. And then towards the end of the month, we certainly want to get all of the IPOs closed out as much as possible. And then at the end of the month, we'll be processing all the IPOs and all the approvals of invoices related to those. So again, you've seen this before. If you have any questions, certainly drop us a note. We'll try and help you out with that. Okay. I have a couple of slides on activities that are going on in procurement that are relevant to campus. The main one is to do with policy updates and uniform guidance. As I mentioned in the previous presentation, uniform guidance is a federal regulation that is upon us, and it becomes effective for Rutgers to be compliant July 1st. So we've done a lot of work in the last 6 months in reviewing the regulations and making sure our internal business processes and policies are aligned with that. And what does uniform guidance mean? It basically applies to all the fund sources that we have that come from the federal government. and we need to follow a certain protocol in terms of how we spend those funds. Just a couple of examples of what Uniform Guidance wants us to do. They want us to do due diligence on just about all the funds that we receive in terms of, do we do competitive bidding? Do we open up the bidding to people across the organization, across the country? It's not limited to particular geography. Does it open up the bidding to small, diverse, disadvantaged businesses? Do you do cost analysis versus price analysis? So there are guidance around all of these elements that we have to be very cognizant about. So what we've done is we've incorporated some of these elements into our policy, and we teed up the policy to the Board of Governors last month. They approved it. We basically have a brand new procurement policy for the university, which we're going to start rolling out next month. There's two parts to the policy. The policy itself, which is based on the old policy plus Uniform Guidance, but we've taken out all the procedural type language that was in the old policy and created a brand new document called the Procedure Manual. That's being finalized. We'll be presenting it to Mike Gower for approval sometime at the end of this month. And with his approval, we'll start deploying that across campus. And we'll be scheduling webinars, training sessions, face-to-face meetings to go over the impact of the Uniform Guidance as well as the changes in the procurement policy. So there's a couple of things I want to highlight on the policy itself. If you look at the table up there, some of the thresholds have changed. So our quick order threshold moved up from $5,000 to $10,000. So I'm sure there's a lot of folks who are going to be happy about that. But it adds a wrinkle. So if you're using funding from a federal source, you have to keep in mind that you have other guidelines that you need to comply with. And so we'll be providing some additional checklists and guidance on that. The threshold for informal bids has been raised. It's now up to $150,000. And what that means for campus is you can have self-directed sourcing events that you can run up to that threshold. You can obviously involve procurement, but you can also do this on your own. Again, we'll be providing some additional guidance on how to do that. And then the formal bid range has been raised from $50,000 to $150,000. That means anything above that level has to come through procurement, has to go through a very rigorous process with a lot of documentation that goes with it. So this, again, is the impact of Uniform Guidance. What we've done is we've applied the Uniform Guidance to a Rutgers policy. We have one policy instead of having two policies, but we'll have in our business processes the guidance to split out the type of transaction based on the value and where it's sourced from. Okay. I'll pause there for a second. Are there any questions on the policy or Uniform Guidance itself? Okay. As I mentioned earlier, we have a procedure manual. We're putting the finishing touches on the training material, and then we're going to tee that up for final approval, formal approval. There's a couple of other updates that I want to give you. The travel policy is also getting updated, and we've incorporated the procedural portions of the travel policy in our new procedure manual. So we'll be rolling out the new revised travel policy at the same time as the procurement policy. And some elements from the travel policy around expense management will be in the procedure manual. The next update is to do around purchasing cards and P cards. We currently have a pilot that's in flight. It's been in flight for just about a month and a half now. We have 11 cards out there. We've done a full month reconciliation, and we're looking at expanding the pilot. One of the challenges we have with the pilot is that it's not fully automated and available for full deployment across campus. We are working with Bank of America to do the final connection, if you will. They've told us 10 weeks to achieve this, and we're hoping that by the end of this month we'll have some more progress information to report back to you. We're hoping that by the middle of next month we'll be in good shape to deploy this. But in the meantime, what we want to do is expand the pilot to some groups that have a pressing need for an alternate vehicle for purchasing, and those include Gaia, which is formerly Rutgers Global, or is it the other way around? We also want to sunset some of the legacy cards we have out there. Believe it or not, we have a Diners Club card out there that's been used by several groups. We certainly want to sunset that. The JP Morgan card, and some American Express cards out there and move them all to Bank of America. And over time, we certainly want to start developing some policies and guidelines around the use of a P card. And we're working with various groups internally, internal audit, OIT, et cetera, and all of these should be ready by the time Bank of America's integration works with our Oracle system. So once that's in place, we'll be in good shape to meet with different groups across campus and develop a plan of action based on the needs of the individual groups. And what I mean by that is the purchasing card can be modified to accommodate for a variety of needs. You might have a group of people who travel, let's say, do studies abroad and are out of the country for extended periods of time. There might be a card program for that group of individuals. There may be a card program just for a departmental level. And there will also be a card program perhaps for travelers down the road. So we want to take into account all of these different constituents and build programs that will work for them. Okay. I believe that's my last slide, so I'll pause there to see if there's any questions either on the P card or policy. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to John Fay. Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to give you some updates on a few more projects Project Management's office is working on. You've already heard from Pete and Kathy and Nimish. We're working on a lot of those projects with them. But just a few other key critical priority projects that we're working on now. Obviously, grants project review, you've all heard a lot about. Top priority for the university right now to get sponsored research projects and finances cleaned up. So there's been a strategic shift in the last couple of months. We've broken it out to 2 phases. So the first phase now is just for active grants, where we're just trying to stabilize the data, get it to the point where budgets and expenses are correct and PIs can actually get good. Hello. Hello. Okay. So the PIs can get good reports. Sorry about that. And we're also did some retraining. We focused on some key sponsored research reports for the field. We actually trained over 300 people in the last month on how to run reports out of Oracle for their PIs. But the phase 1 right now is on track to complete by June 30th. So that's a good thing. The next phase, though, is we still have work to do, obviously, after this. With the active grants, we still have to go back in and complete financial reconciliations and basically balance sheet items, cleaning up things like revenue, billing, and accounts receivable. But we also have about 7,600 expired contracts in the system that we have to do financial reconciliations, do compliance reviews, and get those fully closed out. Another big key for the second phase of the project is to develop consistent business process and policy throughout the university, both in central and within the units, on how we're going to manage grants in the future in the new system. So that goes for central and the units. We'll be rolling out new training programs and new processes. We anticipate that next phase is going to take us about 6 to 9 months. So what are we talking about as far as what we're reviewing? There's about 13,000 projects in the system right now. 5,300 of them are active, and those are the ones we're focused on to get done by June 30th. We've reviewed internally within Central, we've reviewed over 5,000 projects of those 5,300. About 4,400 of those have already been sent out to the field. So what happens is Central goes through a review process. We look at all the data in the legacy systems. We actually go pull the physical files from grants and contract accounting as well as out in the field. We review all data we have available to us and true up the expenses and balances as best we can, but we can't do 100% confirmation to say that information's all right without going out to the field, talking to the research administrators, the business specialists, the business managers, and the PIs, and having them go look at the data and confirm and say, yes, we agree, these balances are correct, these expenses are right. So it's kind of a 2-step process we're going through. Right now, as I said, there's about 4,400 projects out there throughout the university community that all the administrators are reviewing for us, and they're starting to send their responses back and tell us, yes, either these expenses and balances are correct, or no, we don't believe it's correct, and we need to go back and do some further reviews. So where we are with that process is we've gotten almost 2,800 projects back already. These numbers are as of the 15th, so just the other day. So we're doing very good on getting responses back. We're expecting all responses to be back by the first week of June, and that'll give us 3 weeks to make any further recommended corrections or adjustments to get the balances trued up. So what are we seeing as far as what we're getting back from the responses? How good is the review process going, and how valid is the data in the system at this point? So right now, what we're getting back, a little over 60% of what we're getting back, people are telling us everything looks good. The expenses are good, the balancers are good, they can get good reports out of the system. The second column here we noted as confirmed with known issues. What we mean by that is they're telling us everything looks correct with the exception of a few minor things which we had expected to happen. We know since the implementation of the new system there's been issues with things like fringe, F&A, tuition, and payroll. So those four key things, we expected some people to come back and say they wanted us to go back and look at, some further adjustments were needed, but other than those items, everything else looked okay. So that made up another 345 projects. And the last column there is about 700 projects have come back where people have said, look, expenses and balances just don't look correct yet based on what our records show. But what we're seeing on a lot of those that are coming back, they're asking for additional review, are things like missing expenses. So for the longest time, people were put in a position, you had to do what you had to do to keep the PIs working, keep research moving. So you had to spend money. Sometimes you had to book expenses directly into the general ledger, or things were not booked properly in SideQuest and didn't hit your project. So we were expecting some of those. So we need to do some review on those. Some of the budgets came across. There's still some conversion issues with a few budgets we need to look at. And then the other big issue we've been asked to go back and look at is encumbrances. So there are, as I said, a little over 700 projects we need to do a little more work on. So Central is reviewing those now. We'll make the necessary adjustments and send those back out for re-verification. Okay, any questions on project review? I would hope not. I'm talking it to death. Just a couple other key projects just starting off. So we've talked a lot in the past about HR and payroll and where we're going, eventually going to HCM, Human Capital Management Cloud. 2 weeks ago, we kicked off the next phase of this project. This phase of the project is based around designing, development, and implementation of HR service centers. This will help Rutgers in our efforts to provide excellent customer service for all of our campuses as well as Central HR. So we just kicked those off. We have a large team of about 25 people working on this project. We're going through planning right now. We're doing project planning, then we'll get into detailed design and development. Another focus of this project is throughout the next 6 to 8 months as we're working on this, we'll develop the business requirements in order to enable the university to move to the HCM cloud-based system sometime in mid to late 2019. All right, so right now we're still in planning again, but our target right now is by mid-January to pilot the first few services. So again, the HR Service Center will encompass multiple services for the university. We're going to pick some of the top ones, some of the key ones that we feel will benefit the university most, and we'll pilot those in January. We'll continue to add the rest of the services and staff the service center. We plan for that to go live in March. The service center will be located here on the New Brunswick campus. All right, so right now we're still in planning on that, but that's a big project and a real big initiative for the university. Kind of along the same timeline as human resource, which again will serve all of our staff and faculty, obviously. We're also concerned about our students, obviously. So the other program that just kicked off at the same time as HR is the next phase of our student experience improvement initiative. So right now, the focus has been we're still working on design and implementation of one-stop shops for our students. We will have virtual one-stop shops they can call into. We will also have physical one-stop shops located on every campus throughout the university. We plan to roll them out and have them live by fall of this year. We also are looking at a brand new student information system. Again, with the transformation of all systems going into the cloud, that includes student as well. So we're defining the business requirements. This is the phase of the project we just kicked off now, is going throughout and looking at all the different systems that are being utilized today by the different campuses and looking at what the requirements are for a new student system for the university. We plan to go out and select a new student system this fall and begin implementation in 2019. Okay, any questions on student? So this is our timeline right now. Again, we're looking at about 16 weeks just to develop the requirements to make sure that the student system we select for implementation is going to meet all the university's needs. Okay, and then there's the reporting optimization. We've spoken about this before. I just want to give a quick update. So the last 18 months or so, the focus has really been to get new reports and get things out of Oracle. And as we've gone around to the university, especially over the last several months, and talked to folks about how they felt about reporting and are they getting good reports, what we've consistently heard is the reports are okay, but there's not enough information on them. And going back and looking, we realized that's because lots of the detailed information and transaction level information folks are looking for is not in Oracle, it's in the source systems or other systems. So one of the main focuses of this reporting optimization is we're creating data warehouses whereby we can combine all the data out of Oracle as well as every integration source system we have into one location, and then we can create reports that can pull data for you out of every system we have. So that will give the level of detail we need. We're also looking at creating a center of excellence for reporting, because again, lots of the focus and lots of the hard work and effort last year has been sitting in the controller's office, and we're trying to get them some assistance as well. But this will enable us to supporting needs for our reporting and analytics work stream, so we can start providing more analytical information, as Kathy talked about the budget office working on approaching budgets from a more analytical standpoint. We need to start taking all this data and providing better analytical reports for senior leadership to make informed decisions. Change Management Office, we introduced Brady Speller earlier today. Brady's here working in the PMO office with me. We're standing up the Change Management Office. So a lot of folks don't know what is change management, what does that mean? So why does Rutgers need a Change Management Office? So Change Management Office, and for those of you who have been to town halls before have heard me say this, we need to start focusing more on people instead of systems. The Change Management Office will help us shift that focus to the people side of these transformational changes throughout the university. We'll partner at different levels in different ways throughout the entire university. This will ensure people are engaged early in the project lifecycle. It will also make sure you're kept informed and appropriately involved throughout the implementation as well as the rollout of all these new systems. So how will the CMO operate? As our technology platforms and processes evolve, we'll implement consistent approaches to help transitions move smoothly. We're in the process now of developing sustainable models. We're developing new operating models, and we're identifying immediate, medium, and long-term goals to help us implement that strategy. So how will the CMO help me? It'll keep you engaged. You can ensure you'll be communicated to. You'll have an opportunity to provide feedback, and you'll be trained, most importantly, on the new processes and systems to help make your job work easier. Okay? So that's where we're going right now. We're in development on that. We will have the operating model is in testing now. We plan on rolling this out and starting training as early as July 1st for the entire university. Okay? If there's no questions, I'll turn it back over to Mr. Gower.
Take that as a question, not as a statement. Are there any questions? We are going to be having the Ask the Experts sessions, those tables in the back, as soon as we're done here. Feel free to gather at each or any of the tables that you might want to talk to the folks from the various teams and get information that could be helpful to you. But I do want to take another second and see if there are any questions about any topic whatsoever. We have a lot of experts in the room, and we have people who may not be expert, but they'll give you an answer anyway. Again, if you have not given us your email address for this survey, I appreciate that. Those who are online, there's a link there. We'd like to get feedback in terms of how we've changed the format to various topics. We want to continually improve these things to be useful for the community. Again, the slides have been or will be posted on the finance.rutgers.edu website as well. Are we posting the recording? Yeah, for those of you want to catch a nap or something. No, you want to remember that key point that somebody said. It'll be available to you. So, all right. Well, thank you all. I hope everyone has a wonderful summer, and not that, as I said, when the students aren't here, most of us keep on. The only difference is we have less traffic in town. We keep on keeping on. So, thank you all. Have a good evening.